Just agree with that. Okay. Well, I want to welcome everybody to the first Young Entrepreneur Syndicate call. You know, it's not young because we're looking for youth. We're young at heart, young in mind, young in spirit. And some people might just be a young entrepreneur looking to get started into something. So we felt like the name was appropriate. Rod came up with it because you see my background, I've got the book out, Freedom to Say Yes. The acronym for young entrepreneurs was YES. So anyways, welcome to everybody. Again, ask that you just keep your Zoom on mute. If you've got questions during the call, type them in. I really encourage you to have questions, especially as it relates to your own matters or things that you're trying to solve or do. This is an open forum to help you achieve what you want, whether that's in entrepreneurialism or other things. So please use this time to network with Rod and I and anybody else in the group. Ask that you don't record these calls. They'll be recorded and left on the back end of the membership site. So you can go back to them and listen to them at any time. There'll be value on them. They'll be dated and maybe a topic or two on there so you can reference it and what's going to be on there. So why the YES Syndicate and why are you here? I've been coaching the last 3.5 years, a number of great clients across the country. And when I met Rod, he had also had similar interests in doing something to help people. And as we started talking through our relationships and our backgrounds and what we aspired to do from a value standpoint, we realized that it really was in the spirit of giving and offering what I always like to say, we paid the dummy tax so you don't have to, offering some of our experience. And there's a few people on the call that I've had private calls with and have helped in business. And this allows me to help many more people at a time with Rod's expertise and in a network where we can all be a part of something that's special. So what I like to say is we all need coaches, including the coaches of this call. And my particular coach that I've been utilizing recently has been Andy Frisella in the Arte Syndicate with Ed Milet. I'm also a member of the Lion's Den, and I've been a part of David Meltzer's coaching group for a lot of years as well. And the point of saying that is, even though we're at the top of our game and we feel like we've learned everything that we can learn, there's an opportunity to be coached to be better. So I'm going to start off by reading a quote from Andy Frisella. Just got it a couple of days ago, and if you follow his newsletter, you might have got it as well. But Andy really resonates with me, and I thought that it'd be important to start this call with this quote from here. That's actually a small blog. So it says, trust me on this. The more experience I've become in business and life, the more I've come to realize that a lot of success, both personally and professional, comes down to moving forward when everyone else slows down, stops, or quits. Sound familiar? A little bit of COVID. It's a huge deal when you understand the game and how it works. Trust me on this. When everyone else and everything else is going crazy, get laser focused on getting better. It multiplies the gap because you aren't just getting better. You're getting better when everyone else is going backwards. It's a big difference. Shit's going to get hard. Get focused. Make the time. You look back and say, that's the time that fucking made me. We will get through all of this and things will get better. You want to be in the best position possible when that happens. You know, that's how I've lived the last 2.5 years through COVID, is just moving forward, working towards getting better, starting new businesses, doing different things, getting out of the comfort zone to open that gap between me and everybody else. Matter of fact, I started a new business this week, because I'm looking at what's ahead of us, right? So that quote or that message from Andy resonates with me. And I think it's a good foundational statement for what's going to happen in the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate. So keep that in mind. I'll be reading some more of Andy's quotes as we have these meetings, but this is all about getting ahead of others, building that gap and finding success in that. So what's YES going to be about? Well, first of all, we've got our core values, and those values are train, coach, develop, and inspire. And I'm going to let that linger for a minute. And I'm going to ask Rod to step in, give a quick synopsis of his thoughts on YES Syndicate and what you can expect from him. And then we'll jump into some of those values. And then as the call progresses, by the way, we're going to stick to 1 hour, be respectful of everybody's time. But as the call progresses, we're going to talk a little bit about passive income, what that might mean, what to expect in the group, and the values that you'll get out of it. So Rod, I'll turn it over to you for a minute to kind of give yourself an intro and why you're here with me.
Thanks. Hey, I appreciate everyone on the call and those who will be dialing in and watching this later. As Jim said, we got together and our values resonated. And there's something about when you run into somebody else that thinks like you, has a drive like you do, and you can collaborate, and magical things can happen. And I don't mean magical in a sense of, fairy dust coming down and magic stuff happens, but that magic comes in the form of inspiration. And I have files of ideas that I've had over the years. I've always been busy raising a family, running different businesses. I've always had side hustles. And I think that's what an entrepreneur is. It's somebody who's always looking for more, not satisfied with just doing one thing, going to work, trading hours for dollars. And any of you have watched the introductory videos, you'll see that. That's how I've lived my entire life. And I already feel like I have more than I ever deserve. And it's not about wealth. It's not about money. It's about so much more than that. And so Jim and I were literally talking about, well, what does that roadmap to entrepreneurship look like? And we started, in our conversations, it started with us both when we were very young. And I can tell you that the person that's talking to you tonight is not some 60-year-old guy who's, okay, so you've had your time out there, you've got your stuff, what can you do? You're talking to an 18, 19, 20-year-old kid who grabbed every, just milked it for whatever it was. Even though I didn't have the knowledge, I didn't have degrees, I didn't have any of those things, I was already that entrepreneur. And tapping into those things are what I've spent my life trying to unravel. How did that happen? How do you, if you can tap into those things, you can launch yourself forward in any endeavor at any age. You can just catapult that. It's that exponential growth. And I don't think any of us want to ever stop exponentially growing, whether it's our character, whether it's our knowledge, whether it's our spiritual background, whether it's our business opportunities. So that's kind of where I came from at this. And I'm excited, not just for me, but I want to reach back to those 18, 19, 20-year-old kids that, and the people today, the kids today that don't seem to have any hope. That's where my driving force is. I want to help people who are out there who want to get better and excel, but I want to reach backward to the youth and give them stuff that they are not getting in school. I know because I didn't get it in school. I taught school. I didn't teach it in school either. I did in some ways, but you're really limited, which is why I don't teach school anymore. But academia, you're not going to get it. You've got to be around a different group, a different set of people to tap into what the Y.E.S Syndicate is offering. And that's kind of the wrap up there. Again, Jim and I sat down trying to unravel all of that: train, coach, develop, and inspire. Those are the 4 core values that we want to use our backgrounds, our skill set for to launch everyone else forward. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jim, and you can launch into any of those and go a little bit deeper, and then I'll bounce off of you again.
Yeah, perfect. So when you think about inspire as one of our values, and what are we going to do to bring that to this group? Obviously, Rod and I have a lot of great stories and backgrounds, things that we've done. Matter of fact, I realized I resonated with Rod when I read his book, the Warpath. He talked about hunting wolves and making a living killing coyotes out in the eastern side of Montana. And Clay, I know you're out there, and it can be treacherous in the wintertime, especially trying to hunt down some wolves. But I realized that Rod had this grit that I saw myself in off-road racing. And what's interesting about having that grit and being inspired by some of that grit is, what does it allow you to accomplish in your everyday life? Now, as an off-road racer, every time I got behind the wheel of that truck that can do 130 miles an hour through any terrain in the desert, through the middle of Baja with nobody around, I realized if I apply that same type of grit in business, pushing through the harder days, or pushing through that tough meeting, or the bullshit vendor that's giving me the runaround, or the pricing that I don't want to deal with, applying that grit and pushing through, I can find myself on the other side of some of those challenges. So what I like to do is inspire people through some of our stories, but also find your stories that you can drive your own inspiration from. I know some of the stories of the people that are on this call and some of the things that they're capable of doing. We've got somebody on 75 hard right now, developing some of that grit that you can apply into your own life when you get beyond, right? So inspire is going to be a big topic that we talk about, because the importance of finding that inspiration, especially at the beginning of the week as you go into tough times. And by the way, this summer is going to be treacherous from an inflation standpoint, right? So we're really going to need some inspiration amongst our crew, amongst our friends, and this coaching group to get through a tough summer as it relates to inflation and the burden that that's going to put on us. So inspire is going to be important. It's about attitude, gratitude, and I've got a whole list of things that we'll talk about as we have future calls. Rod, what's your perspective on inspire?
Well, the thing that I want to do is I want to inspire people to identify their strengths, their interests, and tap into their instincts. And we all have different ones. And it's funny, in church just this morning, yes, I go to church. I'll throw it out there. They were talking about the talents, and we've all been given talents. Mine's not music, I can tell you that. I can't play a single instrument. I can barely carry a tune, but I have other talents. And when you disregard the things you can't do or the things you're not good at, and you focus at what you are good at, what you're naturally good at, your instinct will drive you forward. And so sometimes it's getting rid of that noise. To be inspired, you get out of that noise. You've got to let that go. And that's probably one of the hardest things we all have to do. We've got demands of family, we've got demands of business, we've got demands of, some of us are in politics, some of us are, juggling multiple businesses, different relationships. So to be inspired is something you have to be intentional about. And that's something that I didn't always know. And even when I did know it, I would fall backwards. And that happened to anybody here? Where you slip, you're doing really well, just like 75 hard, and all of a sudden, you forget to take the picture. Oh, we got to start over, and being inspired is something you don't just do once. It's not just when you start a different business venture. Being inspired is something you've got to intentionally do every day. Look for that inspiration. And that means looking into yourself for it, because it's been given to each and every one of us. And believing that, number one, and tapping into it, number two, are the things that we are going to coach you into focusing on. So those are just some of my thoughts on inspire. But again, focus on your strengths, not your weaknesses, and we're going to help you do that.
So next topic, train. And Rod, thanks for coming clean on going to church. I like you that much more. Of course, I knew that. Something I learned in church this week was about exponential growth. And as it applies to our faith there, it also applies to what we can do in business. What can we do exponentially each week to be better in business, to accomplish that business that we want to start, or to make a little bit more money? And so I relate that to training and, the topics of training, and how do we learn to do more things within our own category of business or in our own personal growth. That way we can see an exponential change. So for me, oftentimes, if you follow me, I always talk about keeping a list of tasks each day and rewriting them as I accomplish them. Well, for me, I'm looking at what can I do exponentially the next day to go a little bit further. And our desire is to train you on how to look for those little nuggets in your everyday business life, personal life, or maybe you just want to get physically fit or healthier. Train you to look for those things and find the opportunities to be a little bit better and go a little bit further. So my take on training. How about you, Rod?
All right, training's fun because I'm a teacher by trade, but I started off, and this is the neat thing. I always call myself the blue collar, white collar, no collar. I've done everything. from driving tractor and school. I started thinking about things that I did in high school and college that I'd even forgotten about. But the important thing about training is I didn't just go to trade my services for money, trade that hour for dollars. I learned something everywhere I went. And those are skills. That's a skill set you get. And that's training. And realizing that when I was writing resumes for myself, and this started in politics, I was writing resumes to get into political office actually. And I didn't write what I did. I didn't write my occupations. What I did was I wrote what I had learned from different things I'd done. That's training. That's not filling out your curriculum vitae. That's not doing a resume. That's telling who you are, who you've become based on your experiences. And that comes in so many different forms, but we learn by observation and we learn by doing. You can learn by hearing, but it's so much better to do. Like Jim said, we've paid the stupid tax. We failed. But training is important, but there are systems to train and everybody learns differently. That being a school teacher, that's one thing I will tell you, everybody learns differently. And that's what we will help you find is what's your skill set like and how do we tap into that with your learning style. That's going to be very important because some stuff's just not going to resonate. A story is going to resonate better than an assignment. Some people, an assignment's going to resonate better than homework. So, and I'm not saying homework to scare anybody away, but yeah, there will be some fun things that we're going to be challenging you to do. So that's training without going into more detail. Back to you.
Yeah. So looking at develop as another one of our core values, one of the things that I often teach my clients is determining what your values are and using that as a foundation to build out not only your personal life, but your business expectations, right? So a lot of us, as we get older, we look at transition. What am I going to do next? Or where can I make money? Or am I going to go to college? Or am I going to go to trade school? I always like to start with values. So it's our intention to help develop those values alongside of you by talking about them and the ones that are important to us. So when I look at my values, my family is right up there on top next to my faith, right? So when I make decisions about where I'm going in business and what type of business I'm going to create or where I'm going to go, it all comes back to my values. So when we look at developing people and helping people, what's your integrity? What's your training? What is your education? What is your peer awareness? Looking at delayed gratification for something that gets you closer to that value, right? So development is an important component to being successful in the direction that you go as an entrepreneur. Rod, go ahead and take that on a little bit too.
Thanks, Jim. Those are ideals that are perfect. And I think one of the things I'm looking forward to most with the Y.E.S Syndicate is developing relationships. One thing Jim and I talked about when we were looking at format and how we were going to handle this and even, cataloging the different topics we wanted to handle. The biggest thing that we wanted was this to be a safe place for everyone to explore ideas, fears, concerns without any judgment at all. So this is a place where we can develop relationships with each other. And again, there are so many things we can learn from other people. Jim and I have a wealth of knowledge and experience, but so do you. So I look forward to developing relationships with Syndicate members so we can, iron sharpens iron. And if you're on this call, you're iron. You're one of the people I want to be around. You're one of the people I want to get to know. You all have something I need to learn or you wouldn't be on this call. And that's what I'm looking and really excited to do is work on developing those relationships and figuring out how we can push off of one another. Jim and I have accomplished some incredible things in the last 5-6 months, and we didn't know each other before that. And imagine what we could all do together when we can branch out and actually start developing relationships and learning each other's skills. And when we've got problems, ideas, concerns, knowing we can bring it here and deal with it. That's part of how we're going to develop our character. That's part of how we're going to develop our strength. So those are the other things in the development values that I'm really tuned into. Jim?
All right. So last one is coach. And I saved that for last. by the way, I've got a few questions already come through on the chat directly to me. So thank you for sending those in. And well, so we're trying to set a stage here for what these calls are going to look like for you in the future and why we're doing this. So bear with us on why we're walking through the core values, because in the future, these calls are going to be very specific about items that people have reached out over, are things that we feel are going to get you to the next level in what you're looking for. So coach, I saved it for last because again, as I said in the beginning of this, we all need a coach. We want to be better. We need a coach. It's interesting because I spent 4 years training to race Spartan competitively and ran the United States very successfully, had a great career in Spartan racing. I'm probably in the worst shape I've been in 6 years since I dropped my coach. I moved to Montana. I don't have a coach here anymore. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, what happened? Well, what happened is I lost that accountability. I don't have to show up at 5 a.m. in the gym anymore and get on the treadmill and get my miles in and pick up the weights and all these other things. We all need a coach. And I'm the first one to recognize that. I've done very well having my biblical and my faith by going to church, my coach there. I've got my pastor. I've got Y.E.S Syndicate and Lion's Den. Business is jamming for me. I feel healthy, but I'm missing that physical coach. So the point is we want to be there for you as coaches. And what's going to happen here is you're going to get out of these calls exactly what you put into it if you ask the questions and allow us to untangle those on these calls, because not only will you benefit from it, but the others listening will benefit from it. And to be honest with you, I'm going to use all the things I'm learning in Y.E.S Syndicate, bring them to these calls. All the things I'm getting from Lion's Den, bring them to these calls. And, you know, if you're counting dollars, that's $750 worth of calls I'm on a month that I'm going to bring back to here. So I look forward to having some coaching sessions and having real questions that we can dive into on these calls. Like I said, I've already got a few. Rod, if you want to touch on coaching, then I'll jump into some of the Q&A that we've got coming in.
All right, thanks, Jim. Coaching, I look at this in a couple of different ways. Number one, every place I've gone, I've learned something from. And I've also taken away things that I didn't like about those things that could have been done better. And I think most of you probably can understand that if you're an entrepreneur, you usually see things other people don't, looking a little bit deeper. And that's been one of my talents, one of my gifts. I always thought when I was even in my 30s, I didn't feel qualified, but I knew I could be an efficiency expert. I could walk in anywhere and figure out how to get things done to just raise the level, change it a little bit and make a difference. Those things are easy to spot if you're looking. And so coaching for me is going to help you find those little things. It's if you look at the little things and you focus on those, it can make a huge difference. And coaching to me, my best examples are probably my own children, my adult children. And Clayton, you had the experience to not only meet one of my children, her dedication, her tenacity. She's intelligent. She's actually going to be a guest speaker on a call with Jim and I, a nationwide call with 1776 Syndicate. I've coached 4 children into successful adulthood, and not everyone gets that benefit. And I have some background there, but I want to bring that to the world. Coaching is something that's personal to me. Coaching is doing the little things that will make a big difference, not just for the individual, but for the world. I expect this group to impact this country. That's what I expect. So I'm not going little, I'm going big.
So Rod, I got some questions that have come in. So I'm going to throw the first one at you. And by the way, for everybody on the call tonight and the ones that will listen to this in the future, it's interesting how many things that Rod and I have done between the two of us. We were talking the other day and I said, hey, we've got to talk about people that want to buy a franchise. And he goes, what do you mean franchise? Like, start when I said, no, people that want to buy a franchise. And he goes, well, I'm not really familiar with that. I said, well, guess what? I used to oversee franchise development. So don't think that there's any untapped category right now. And if there is one, we'll go find some answers for you. So here's the first question. I'm going to throw it to you, Rod. If it requires more answer, I'll answer too. But right now it says, what's the hardest thing about working from home or working for yourself?
Well, let's see. I'll unravel that first with work-life balance. I know, Jim, you're driven. I'm driven. Most entrepreneurs are driven, and you need to know when to stop. And I made that mistake early on in my career by driving too hard, too fast for too long. And it near cost me my family. So that's the stupid tax. So I think it's a matter of prioritizing and scheduling. The hardest thing is really reining yourself in and knowing that you have to stop, that work has to stop, and you have to feed the nurture. I won't say feed. You have to nurture the other parts of your life as well, your spiritual life, your family life, your social life. You've got to find a balance in all that, because if you're working, especially working from home, it's not, entrepreneurs are not people that you're going to find slouching, sloughing off, in their bathrobe at 11 o'clock in the morning. They're up and doing. And so that's not the issue. The issue is doing too much, going too strong, too fast. That's been my experience, Jim.
Yeah, and I'll bring up a couple of topics on, the hardest thing from working from home and working for yourself. First of all, I started a business like Rod, he said it almost cost him his family. Well, I did start a business and it did cost me my family. I went through I don't want to say a brutal divorce almost 10 years ago now, but it did cost my family. And I think what we really have to do when we look at our business life, especially as entrepreneurs, is, where is that balance? How do we accommodate what we need to do in business, but also in life? And make sure that you're evenly yoked on all fronts, because you can go too deep being an entrepreneur and forget about the important things. So, just putting that out there, that I've suffered pretty hard. But what I have found now, I'm remarried with 2 kids, is that I found a really good blend of having my values be my compass of how much time I spend doing different things, right? So my values are God, family, health, giving back. Business is the last value I have. So if I can focus on those other things first and make sure that they're taken care of first, then I can give it my all in business and do what I need to do from that standpoint, and know that I'm not going to suffer the loss that I have in the past. Now, working from home can be challenging as well. Creating an environment that you call your office, that the door's shut and people know that there's some boundaries, is the best thing that I found. Before I moved to Montana, my office was like a revolving door with my kids, and it became very challenging. So working from home, you've got to set some parameters with your family, set some working hours though, and some expectations for the rest of your family or other people that you interact with, so that they know, hey, I don't go in there at this time, but they're available at this time, because it's kind of an open door deal. So one thing that's helped me a lot as working for myself and working from home is applying one of Andy Frisella's principles, is having a core 5 items that I do every day. So I write on a note card here, 5 things that I want to accomplish today. And once I've accomplished those, I know that I've done the tasks that are most important to me, and I can either decide to finish for the day or keep going up until that hour that I know should be quitting time. So it can be a little bit challenging there. The next question, I'm going to answer it first, but I'm going to give it to you as well, Rod, after I'm done, is how do you find opportunities? The reason why I'm going to take this first is because it seems like for the last 30 years, I've been able to see opportunities in just about anything that's been in front of me. And it's one of the reasons why I've resonated with Rod so well, is because he also has that similar personality. I hate to see a good opportunity go by and not try to monetize it, if not just in my head, but maybe take advantage of it. A live example, I mentioned earlier that I'm taking on a new business this week. There's a property down the road from my house. I live in a valley outside of town, a lot of farmland here, a lot of homes with big lots, meaning we're spread out. Between here and the next town, which is 15 miles away, there's nothing but homes and farms. There's no food, there's no bars, there's no services. There's one gas station. They got, some knickknack stuff there. But there's an old restaurant that used to be there, and it sat dormant the last 15 years. And a year ago, I tried to buy it, but it was really kind of a disaster. And I kept coming back to it and back to it. And finally, I found what the opportunity was because I thought about it enough. I flushed it out enough and realized the opportunity there is property management. The owner's lazy, self-professed. I'm not calling him lazy. He called himself lazy. He hasn't done anything with it in over a year. He hasn't monetized it in over a year. So I went to him and I said, hey, let me be the property manager here. I will monetize it for you. We'll split the income. It's a good deal for him. He hasn't done anything in over a year and he's lazy. So if I can go over there and monetize that, now I can turn that into somewhat passive income as a property manager without putting any money out. What I'm going to utilize is my relationship capital, my marketing strength, and my network that I've built the last 3 years living in a small town. So I find opportunities everywhere around me, but I also flush them out of my mind. And I say, is there a business there? Can I monetize that? Does it fit within my values? Do I have time to do that? So you need to start training your mind to look at things as opportunities, especially as we look to how do we create more passive income or more revenue streams, which I'm working on doing as we get into higher inflation rates, is finding more revenue streams, start looking at the opportunities. And I'm hoping through your questions and as we develop a relationship that you'll go, hey, I'm thinking about this opportunity. What do you guys think? And allow us to flush it out on these calls so we can all learn from that. So Rod, do you want to take on that as well? How do you find opportunities?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Jim. I'm going to hit this from a different angle. If you are looking to help people, if you really want to help people, opportunities will fall into your lap, and you can monetize on that, and that's what entrepreneurs do, obviously. So, but if you have that servant mentality, that servant attitude, and I'll give you one example. How many of you have heard of counter assault bear spray? Probably most of you.
Yeah.
Right? All right. Well,
city, guys.
Yeah. So I was working at a retail store, and the gentleman, Bill Pounds, who developed the capsicum spray, he actually atomized it. He developed that. And he was just a customer at a retail store, and I developed a relationship with him. And he was telling me about this bear spray, and he'd gone these studies in Japan, and the stuff was really going to work, but he just didn't know how to get it out there into the marketplace. He didn't know how to do that. And that was just like getting it into sporting goods stores. Well, I was in retail, and back then we had lots of salesmen. It wasn't all online. We had sales reps that would come in, and we'd have the good sales reps had the big accounts, and lots of them in multi-state areas. So I said, hey, how about this? I'll start a distribution company, Bill. Okay, you've got this product. I'll find the salespeople to get it out there. And so I started a distribution network. I sent some of these sales reps, the best ones I could find, that were working Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota. I had an entire region, and that's bear country. And I had the exclusive rights of all the sales of the bear spray. And that was just launching it before everyone knew what bear spray was. And then he launched OC10, which was the police version, the smaller canisters, a higher pepper spray. And same sort of thing, just we already had networks. So when you start utilizing the networks and the relationships you have to help somebody else, you can find ways for that to monetize your income, a supplemental income. And it was counter assault distribution systems. And we only had it for a year and a half, 2 years. Bill was fine. It met the needs we needed to do, and we moved on. So it wasn't a permanent opportunity. It was just a part-time, will help you get this done. But those things are out there if you're looking to help people. And again, it's your instinct, but it's your relationships and wanting to help people.
I think a lot of times there's opportunities right in front of us. And until you change your mentality of going, hey, this could be an opportunity for me to help them, but also to help monetize my situation. I've got some passive income through relationships that I have where I develop a commission off of work I send to people, work that I can't do. And then the commission comes back for sending that work to them. Now we're both benefiting, and the client's benefiting because I'm sending them somewhere that I believe in and trust. And I'm actually an extra layer of accountability and kind of the nudge if somebody's not doing their job. So there's always opportunities in front of us. when we start shifting that gear. And that's what we're hoping through our core values, that we're going to help you shift those gears as well to start seeing those opportunities to create more income streams or more opportunity if you want to shift gears on what you're doing in life. Rod, I'm going to let you take the next one, which is kind of interesting. Can introverts and non-salespeople become entrepreneurs?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a fine one, Jim. Thank you very much. So, yes and no. That's a political answer. We're in a political season, right? Yes and no. I don't think there's, well, labels are out there. And if I were to be labeled, I would be labeled an introvert. I would have labeled myself an introvert. And that just means that I was uncomfortable in different situations. I'm not that person to just go jumping out there in front of people. But if you're going to be successful, number one, you have to realize that you're already a salesperson. Everybody's a salesperson. Nobody is a true introvert. You know, we're social creatures, whether, you know, it's family, church members, circle of friends, people you recreate with, golf with, drink with. I don't know what it is. We're social creatures. So I don't buy the whole introvert thing. I think that's an excuse. Salesmen, we're all salespeople. You're always selling someone something. You know, I want to go here for dinner. Well, I don't. I want to go here. Well, you have to sell people on your idea. We're all salespeople. I think it's an excuse, but we have to find a comfort zone in dealing with that excuse, because it's easy for all of us to make those excuses. And that's even excuses not to do something that we should be doing, like your lazy friend. He's not really lazy. He's just not found a reason enough yet to overcome that excuse. So I think that we just need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's something we all can do. I taught my own kids this. If you approach everything as show and tell, that's something any second or third grader can do. And they look forward to it. Even my grandkids, you know, they bring something to school once a week. Show and tell is the most fun and exciting thing that people do when they're kids. And then we lose that somewhere. We need to get back to show and tell. If everyone's a salesperson, all you have to do is show somebody what your idea is and tell them about it. It's that simple. It's show and tell. It's not sales. Show and tell.
Rod, it's an awesome point. And this is a good nugget for the call, especially if, you know, you're looking to start a business, maybe raise some capital. I sent my book out that I wrote to several people that made an impact in my life over a period of years through different business transactions or hobbies, et cetera. And I received an email back. I just pulled it up. This was yesterday morning. And my friend Bob Gramman, he's only a friend through business now. He loved the book, lots of compliments there. But he said one thing on here, which was, you demonstrated the biggest ingredients to a successful entrepreneur. And that was strong work ethic, persistence, drive, and determination. As a matter of fact, your email says it all: live life driven. Now, what's interesting about that is I raised $12 million through Bob and his network to launch my tequila company. And it wasn't the business plan that they wrote those checks over. It was those things that he just described about me and my team. So when you think about the original question is, you know, can introverts and non-salespeople become entrepreneurs? Well, we all have a story. And like Rod calls it, we all can show and tell what's important to us, or what we're doing, or why we're starting this business, or why we're trying to raise capital. It's our story. And I think that takes the salesperson or the introvert out of the equation, because certainly we all talk to our family members and our friends and all those other things. We have to realize that we're the component or the glue that makes the difference in our success, especially as it relates to things like what I did with Bob, and that was raising $12 million. I never thought in my wildest dreams I'd raise $12 million for a business concept that I came up with and wrote a business plan after hours and presented it to somebody. So it's about having that confidence in who you are. Okay, Rod, you touched on politics a second ago, and this isn't about politics, but it does. The question is, how do you address capitalism as being evil, or basically making money? You know, people say, oh, you're all about making money. So that's a good question.
So you're throwing this one at me too? Okay.
Yeah, you can that one too first.
It's funny, Jim, because I actually printed this out, and I knew that this question was going to come up, and I'm going to use an example to address this. And I know that you've got thoughts on this because this is something you and I have discussed in our business strategies. But I follow a person on social media, and she is an entrepreneur, but she's not the entrepreneur you're thinking about, where it's a brick and mortar business. She's a social entrepreneur. So she's on Instagram and Facebook, and she's monetized. She's a thru hiker, and she's got huge following, and she's a school trained engineer, but she's hiking trails across the United States and eventually the world, and blogging about it and getting paid for it. That's an entrepreneur. And she's passed on a really cool thing on the internet. It says, replace alcohol with water. These are just tips, right? Replace alcohol with water, replace Netflix with podcasts, replace influencers with creators, replace overthinking with actions, and replace toxic friends with mentors, replace spending money with investing, replace sleeping with early mornings. And the first comment she got back on this post said, this is some boomer conservative advice. How about let people enjoy their lives without worshiping capitalism? And you think about that, and this woman is not you wouldn't look at her and say she's a capitalist. Her goal is not to make money. Her goal is to enjoy life and share it with other people. And she's monetized it. And somehow that's not an evil thing. That's a good thing. We should all be using our talents and our gifts to share with the world, and we shouldn't be ashamed of getting paid to do it. You know, that's how our country works. And we need to get rid of that guilt and shame for making money, because making money is just a tool. Remember, it's not money's evil, it's the root. The love of money is the root of all evil. You know, money's just a tool. It's just like a hammer and a nail. It allows you to do different things. So, but you have to have an answer for that, because some people don't want you making more money. In fact, most people don't. Most people would rather be lazy and stay at home and suffer, you know, complain about the gas and complain about inflation and everything else, instead of looking for ways to get beyond it. So just some of my quick thoughts, Jim, and I'll let you go a little deeper on that if you want.
Well, you know, I've been accused of being successful and you know, it's all about the money, which it's not. Matter of fact, my fourth value is about giving back. And that's how I feel about money. If I'm not making money, I can't give money back to others. I can't support the local charity or the politician that shares the same beliefs that I have, or I can't afford the time to spend with my kids and all these other things. So making money is a good thing. It's what you do with it and what you allow it to become in your life, whether that's good or bad. So it's kind of interesting because people do get accused of issues about money. So, okay, I got a couple more questions. Rod, I'll let you lead off on them and I'll weigh in. Best advice for someone looking to start a professional network?
Tap into what you already have. You already have a professional network. The people you know all have skills, talents. So those are part of your network. So look at them as such. That's the first thing, is that's the low hanging fruit. Whether that's people at your church, bankers, obviously people that you socialize with, but start, you know, you have to have conversations to make those relationships go further. And then here's the number two thing I will say is ask. You need to ask those people who they're relying on. Who would they send you to if you had a question about X, Y, or Z? So you didn't specify which kind of professional network. You know, do you want the dental network? You want, you know, doctors, medical people? But start with where you're at and then ask. You need to ask for help, ask for advice, ask for the people. Online, obviously, you can look for on social media, you know, different groups, specialty groups, and there are tons of them out there. And then get involved, get engaged with those groups, and you will start building those relationships. And Jim, I'm sure you'll hit on this too. Then start capturing email.
Yeah, email is going to be gold in the future, especially as more and more social media is manipulated by the ownership of those companies. So as many emails, build your networks. You'll be surprised at how many people are actually in your network once you look at it and evaluate, your Outlook box and who you connect with, it, et cetera. So there's great opportunity. By the way, Jim, thanks for mentioning Jake Kelfer, Elevate Your Network, perfect book to help. Jake was on my podcast show. Wonderful individual, lots of resources through Jake. There you go. Good job. Thanks, Jim. Okay, so here's another question. When is a good time to get out of business you're not happy in, when that business is the primary means to support your family? The tough part about that is the support the family, right? And oftentimes, and I think we'll see this more than anything in the syndicate as time progresses, people will be stuck in a career job. I've coached a lot of individuals that are in the fire department, our police department, and they're suffering. They're unhappy. It's like, oh, well, 8 more years I can retire and get my pension, or 6 more years, or 15 more years. And I equate that similarly to this question and what other people's what their circumstances might be. There is no exchange in life for suffering with your family, right? So if you're unhappy in a job and your family's suffering because of it, you're not the person that you know that you could be because of it. You have to develop a plan to move on and move out, because there is nothing worth sacrificing the important things. Again, going back to your values. Are you sacrificing values for this job or for this position that you're in? Because if you are, it's time to cut bait. Just move on. I was given some great advice when I got out of racing. I had 3 race cars, 40-foot RV, a couple of trailers, a shop with 5 guys working. I mean, I had a lot of assets, and I was getting ready to be done with it. And my old race partner says, Jim, when you're done, you got to cut it off as fast as possible. It's a freight train moving in a direction. And if you don't cut it off, it's going to drain you. And I look at this question, I think, don't let what you're doing drain you and your ability to do something else. Don't let your family suffer because of that. So build a plan, work the plan. Now that plan might take a year to get it going and be in a place where you could cut the cord, but at least you've started now knowing what the end goal is. So when you get there, you can cut that cord with some comfort and your family doesn't suffer because of that. But that freight train's moving. If you don't start building a plan and stopping it, it's going to tear you up. So, Rod, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that, because it's a heavy question, but it's very important.
I do. And I appreciate you asking that question too, because that puts you in a real vulnerable spot. Number one, your family, I assume, knows that you're on the same page. You have to have this discussion with the family, or if you're just trying to hide it and make the best of it, it's going to kill you. So make sure your family knows how unhappy you are. And that way they're going to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And then start looking for those opportunities to come. Jim, you hit the nail on the head. It's time to start building that plan. And that plan might be building that business up to its maximum potential so you can maximize your profit when you bail out of it, so that you've got yourself more of a hedge. But if you start looking, put it on paper, that plan. How do you maximize selling that business so it can, buy you extra time or start investing in other businesses? Secondly, I would say, what is it that does make you happy? Because that's where you should start spending that extra time, that extra money. And if you can start doing that, it might not seem like the business you have is such a drudgery. If you're building another business that is making you more happy, as long as you're getting that work balance, the balance part of it done. But strategy, you have to strategize your way out of this. And I can tell you from personal experience, I spent 7 years in work purgatory, and it was killing me. And I kept, well, I can get through this. I will do this. I'm going to persevere. I'm going to keep moving on. And at some point, it's like Jim said, you got to get out. You got to get out and just cut it all off and watch it derail itself. But if you can, get it on a different track so you can maximize your exit, that would be it. But make sure your family's on board and everyone's in it together. That's the quick answer. And if that's not enough, let us know.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to that dummy tax thing too, and I'll just share a little personal story. I started my tequila company, Azuña Tequila, and I ran it for 10 years. The business plan was we'd bring money in, we'd reinvest the money, and we'd sort it out later. Really, it was on track to be $100 million brand. Now, the challenge with that is that the investors had to keep coming in. We had to keep raising capital, and you never really saw a lot of that. But as an owner and a founder, I started becoming beholden to those investors and what they thought was right. And I reached a point where my wife now, she says, Jim, this isn't you. You're becoming somebody else because of those investors. You're coming home miserable because of those investors. The integrity that you set up, your mission statement, it's all changed because of them. And believe me, this is all we had, right? And I was faced with the same question. And what she said to me, she said, I will support whatever you do, even if literally we've got to eat top ramen. Now, I knew that wasn't going to happen because we had enough assets, but it was a big decision. This company was my baby. I birthed it from nothing, and I had to make that big step. And so what I like to say often is have faith over fear. And that faith can come in a lot of ways, whether that's faith in your, in God above, or it's faith in yourself and your own abilities. Clay, you asked this question to everybody, so I know it's not a secret. You have an incredible military background where certainly you've had a lot of faith over fear and you've accomplished some things. So apply some of that and know that we've all been in these places. I have, for one, and it required me to step away from something that I birthed. And I'll end that by saying I've had the best 10 years of my life walking away from something that I thought was everything I ever had. So there is life after. There's a lot of good things after that. So we hope that we can help you through that. So again, I mentioned that these calls would stick to an hour. I want to say a few things in wrapping up, and then I'll let Rod do the same. And that's, what can you expect from these calls? And I think at the same time, what I would expect to have from this group, especially as we grow, and I'll remind people often, I took a couple calls this week from two different individuals that are looking at buying businesses or partnering in a business. And I spent an hour on the phone with each one of them. And we were problem solving. We were flushing out the pluses and the minuses of that, giving direction or adding value to their thought process. My hope and desire is that you can come to these calls with those types of scenarios and say, hey, I've got a business opportunity. I want to spill it out. Can you give me 5 minutes to throw my pitch out there? And allow Rod and I to weigh in on that, and then the group to weigh in on the chat session, so that you can maximize everybody's opinion, especially the two old guys that have paid some dummy tax, on what you're looking to do. So what you can expect is a support system to flush out maybe business ideas, business plans, opportunities, or things that you're faced with in the calls. Also looking at a number of ways to increase your revenue through whether that's multi-level marketing, looking at going to a trade school because you want to learn something different. If you're young and you want to go to college, if you're old, you want to go to college, we can flush out what that looks like and where you would take that. Maybe you want to buy a franchise. Okay, I want to get in the franchise business. Let's talk about what that would look like and how you can make money there, whether you're all in on that or it's going to become a passive income thing, or maybe you just want to start a small business or another revenue stream. So what you can expect is a place where you can flush all that out here. We can address those topics. You could email us if it's a much larger topic. We can work together on these things and you get real value here. The other calls that I'm on, they're great. Lion's Den, when you go through Sean Whalen's, he's got his core four, but each week's a different deal. When he talks about passion, I totally tune out. So for me, I miss a week of value, right? We're open to give you constant value every week. And something against his setup, that's very important for some people. And here we're going to be entrepreneurs and talk about ways to add value there. So Rod, do you want to weigh in some final thoughts?
Yeah, final thought, especially on the last question we dealt with there. One of the things that I found is, being the oldest guy here on the call, by the looks of it, I don't know, I can't see everybody on there.
Give yourself a
but I imagine that I am. And sometimes there are things you won't get over, but you will get through it. And I think that's what this syndicate is about, is we're going to help you get through it, because you're never going to get over it. It's going to be part of who you are, whether you fail. We're here to try and optimize your success strategies. But even if you take some bumps on the road, you're going to get through it. And that's the message I want to carry forward with everything that we do, because you're never going to get over it. We have a memory. You're going to learn from it. And we're going to help you learn from everything that we've done and everything that you're doing. So it's been a pleasure to, share a little bit of ourselves and a little of our story already tonight. And we look forward to tapping in and going deeper.
Yeah. The last thing I'll add to that is you have to look at the value of the relationship capital that you're going to be able to tap into here, not only for myself, but Rod, but other people in the group, because relationship capital is what's going to get you a little bit further down the road. And I'll leave this last example for you. I have a podcast. Now, I really didn't have a lot of interest in doing a podcast, but I knew it was going to help drive SEO traffic towards my online website store. But what I was told by David Meltzer, and I've used this ever since, is it's all about relationship capital. I can call just about anybody that's an expert in an industry and ask them to be on my podcast. Now we've got over 60,000 subscribers, and suggest that they'd be a great guest, which they probably would be, and befriend them to allow my relationship to flourish, and maybe ask them some questions that maybe I need answers to for this group or for my coaching clients. So when I look at my relationship capital as it sits right now, there's no limits to it. And I'm hoping to bring a lot of that to this group as well. So let's explore relationship capital together, being respectful of your time. I want to thank everybody for joining on the call. We're going to start pushing hard on this. We kind of eased into it. I always say, it's time to get started and grow from here. So I look forward to having you guys back in the future. These calls are going to be Monday nights at 6 o'clock. The reason why is it's the beginning of the week. You're going to be able to get something to kick off the rest of your week. We talked about doing Sundays, but they didn't align with the values of Sunday being family day for Rod and I. So we're trying to practice what we preach. So good to see everybody. Thank you for being on the calls. Come back with good questions next week.